Hey, Greg here. Did you know that I've created a few walking tours of Bangkok? Using the GPS on your phone, the routes take you through some of my favorite areas of the city, exploring the fascinating neighborhoods and hidden history that give Bangkok its sweet, sweet mojo. Head to voicemap.me and search for Bangkok. On this episode, we chat with Clif from BangkokBeerGuide.com about the constant evolution of Bangkok's craft beer scene.
So if you're a fan of big beer, small beer, craft beer, or weird beer, you'll dig this episode of the Bangkok Podcast.
Sawadee krap, and welcome to the Bangkok Podcast. My name is Greg Jorgensen, a Canadian who came to Thailand in 2001 after I ran afoul of Canada's moose tax laws and went on the run. Ain't no way those hosers are getting my toonies.
Moose tax, that's definitely a Canadian thing.
You don't mess around with that.
And I'm Ed Knuth, an American who came to Thailand on a one-year teaching contract 23 years ago. Fell in love with my friends suffering horribly from mosquito bites. Well, I usually remain unscathed, so I never left.
You do, you bastard.
I don't know what it is. Mosquitoes don't like me, man.
Oh man, they love me, especially my feet. When I was on cement a few weeks ago, I was sitting on the beach for dinner, and I had to pile sand around over my feet and up to my ankles so the mosquitoes wouldn't get it. They love it.
I realized over the years that I take pleasure when that happens to my friends. It's kind of a schadenfreude thing. And so that's one of the reasons why I stay here.
Well, that's one of the reasons why we don't like you.
All right, we want to give a big thanks to all of our patrons who support the show. Patrons get every episode a day early, behind-the-scenes photos of our interviews, a heads up to send questions to upcoming guests, and access to our Discord server to chat with me, Greg, and other listeners around the world. But best of all, patrons also get an unscripted, uncensored bonus episode every week where we riff on current events and Bangkok topics. On this week's bonus show, we chatted about Greg's golf skills after he took his son to a driving range and somehow managed not to break his spine, the saga of returning an iPad with a swollen battery in Thailand, which actually isn't that much of a saga, but it is, as we learn, the safe and responsible thing to do, and the story of a maid who inherited 100 million baht from her French employer after she committed suicide, and the inevitable storm of money men and hangers-on that the poor woman will probably have to deal with to get the inheritance. To learn how to become a patron and get all this good stuff, plus full access to over 700 bonus and regular back episodes, click the support button at the top of our website.
Totes my goats. And don't forget, if you listen to us on Spotify, you can now hear all the bonus shows there as well. If you're a patron, simply link your Patreon account to your Spotify account and add our new feed titled Bangkok Podcast Badass Patrons Only to hear the regular and bonus shows in the same place.
Heck yeah.
Alrighty then. Well, on this episode, we dive back into the foamy yellow side of Bangkok with another episode of our intermittent series on Bangkok's craft beer scene.
Wait, foamy and yellow? That could be more than one thing.
Well, I didn't want to put words in your mouth, but whatever you want to follow, that's your path in life.
Okay.
Long-time listeners might remember our interviews with Ted from Changwon Brewery, Kun Chit from Chit Beer, Brian from Beervana, and of course Kun Tao from Thailand's Parliament, who has literally gone to jail over craft beer. So we thought it was time for an update. And to that end, we are happy to sit down with our buddy Clif from BangkokBeerGuide.com. As a fan of not only the amber liquid himself, but of the culture, camaraderie, and companionship that craft beer culture promotes, he puts a ton of work into keeping BangkokBeerGuide.com updated with all the latest info on the city's best spots to enjoy a brew. So I sat down with Clif to talk about beer in Bangkok, how the scene is evolving, and some of our favorite spots to go for unique new flavors and old school favorites alike. So here's my conversation with our pal Clif. Nice. This is like the start of that very famous Canadian movie, Strange Brew. You ever seen that?
Yes.
Of course.
I was also going to say there are a couple of very good songs, country music songs. Pop a Top Again.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, it begins with a great sound of a can of beer opening.
Cheers, man.
Cheers.
Well, everyone, if you haven't guessed, I'm here with my guest tonight, drinking beer.
Hello, everyone.
And this is Clif from the Bangkok Beer Guide. Clif, welcome to the Bangkok podcast.
Thank you very much. I'm very excited to be able to talk about beer.
Yeah, well, I'm very excited to be able to talk and drink about beer. Of course, can we even say that? We can't. I know we can't show pictures in Bangkok. Maybe we'll talk about that later. But
I think the laws have become very fluid as of recently. Not everything is so black and white anymore.
I think they're too busy legalizing or unlegalizing marijuana and magic mushrooms and what have you.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, it's been a while, you and I going back and forth, but we finally sat down together. And I thought it'd be fun to have you on because we have done shows on beer in the past. And we did one in season 2 with Evo about the Changwon Beer Express, I think it was called. And then, of course, a few years ago, we had on Pichit, the godfather of Thai craft beer. And those guys are still going strong. And now you've got this website called the Bangkok Beer Guide.
Correct.
So fill us in, man. What's going on? What's it about? And what are you trying to do?
Well, it is about supporting especially local Thai beer when you're coming to drink in Bangkok. One of the things I think I want to first say is that I am not saying that I am the guide. The idea is that the website is a guide for beer lovers. So the Facebook page, the Instagram is really meant to show a love of beer and especially when I can, a love of local craft beer. The idea being that if a tourist comes into town or there is somebody that is in Bangkok and is looking for information about beer, especially craft beer, that this would be able to act as a guide to maybe find a new place to try a beer or to find out more information about different beer events.
Right. It sounds like a big job, man. Things are constantly changing, and COVID must have just done a job. Although you've only been in Bangkok for just over a year, you said, so you were here post-COVID, I think.
Correct. I've been here about a year and a half, and I think I was able to hit the very tail end of COVID. So I've been fortunate that I didn't have to see any of the bars really close. Instead, I saw a ramp up of the beer drinking situation, if you will.
Right.
And honestly, when I got here, I've been a fan of craft beer in multiple nations. So when I got here, I was like, well, how do I find out more information about the local scene? Unfortunately, there weren't really many resources. So I was like, well, this is a passion of mine. I'm going to go ahead and have some fun. Let me create the Bangkok Beer Guide.
That's awesome, man. And now for those who might not really know the landscape of beer in Bangkok, and Thailand, it's a bit of a strange beast because there are regulations and laws and restrictions in place that might not be in place in other areas. First of all, you're not allowed to buy alcohol between the hours of noon and 5 p.m.
It's the big one is you're not supposed to be able to buy alcohol between 2 and 5 p.m. Unless you happen to be at a restaurant.
Right.
So that's where a lot of the bars are able to kind of get around. But I think there's also sometimes you just have to sell a little bit of snacks, and I think you can start serving beer a little earlier than most people would imagine you would.
Right. So they put a can of beer on the thing with a peanut on top and they're like, there's your meal.
Bingo.
A free beer. The peanut costs 700 baht. There's also a long-standing, like decades old laws in place about the production of craft beer. And those were written, I think it's probably safe to say, largely to protect the big beer companies.
So I will agree with you. Yes, those laws combine an issue that there is sometimes a concern that the beer a person makes in their bathtub or in their garage may not actually be that safe.
I think it's a legit concern.
That is a legit concern. There is something to be said of needing hygienic standards. But in practice, these laws of saying that beer has to be produced at such a great quantity that you have to be a big company already before you can do anything really also acts as a way to make sure that the really big names in beer remain the big names in beer and that they're very hard to take any market share away from them.
Right. I think in the current sort of current international news, the parlance of current international news, that would be called anti-competitive behavior in Western language.
Absolutely. Or crony capitalism, I
Sure,
think, is another
sure.
one. And I would like to point out this is a conversation piece that is often had with craft beer drinkers. Oftentimes when we support local craft beer, we're not saying don't drink anything else. For number one, I will happily drink one of the big guys, Chong Leo Sing. Those are good standard beers. You know what you're going to get from them. But if I'm going to go out on a night out, I'm probably not going to be looking for those places.
Right. Yeah, you're not going to go out on a Chang bender with the boys who are in town.
That's generally not my style. No, sir.
So, but in recent years, I'd say probably over the past 10 years or so, the craft beer scene has really sort of grown from this little sort of backyard bathtub thing that you were talking about to a real legitimate force. And there's been a lot of Thais who have been introduced to the scene overseas and have brought their tastes and likes back. That's how Pete Chit got started when he was over in Denver, I think he was. I can't remember. There's even now it's bled into politics. A former guest, Taophipop, is a big beer guy, and he even went to jail.
Tao. Yep. Tao is his own place out on the west side.
Yeah, it's close to our place, right?
Have you been there yet?
Both Clif and I live in Thonburi, the cool part of Bangkok. And
this is one of his beers, by the way. I'm going to hand you a can of cold beer that is brewed by Tao.
Wow, amazing. Yeah, I haven't been to his place, but I'll tell you what, once we're done here, let's make a date.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
I've been, his place is Tao. I'm probably not going to say it the best, but Taophipop Project. It's actually a really cool place. And it's funny as an American going there because the rules are different. So his place is a bar, has a great selection of local and imported beers, but it's also his campaign headquarters. So when you go in there, you see posters of him smiling all nice. And it's like, that is the same guy that I was drinking beer with at a beer festival. That's awesome.
Right. Well, Pitao is a member of parliament here, and he has argued very vociferously for the legalization of craft beer and that industry. And it, like I said, it's bled into politics now. So it's become somewhat of an issue over the past decade. And it's really starting to become much more common now. And I know that it might seem a bit weird. I mean, you're a foreigner. You haven't been here that long. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But you obviously have a passion for this. So you might not be the best guy to know all the nuances of the scene in Thailand.
I 100% agree with you. I will say one of the things that I am just trying to do is just trying to get more information out there so that maybe the people I reach, I can say, hey, here's some good information. And also here's some other guys with some good information.
Right.
And in the idea, in my mind, I'm saying, let's really build up the community so there's a wider knowledge and everything going on. If I may give an example, there's another guy that's been drinking craft beer, doing much more here in Bangkok longer than I have. His name is Craig Sowers. Sowers?
Oh, I've heard the name. Yeah, he's been on Twitter for a long time.
Yeah, he recently started doing a Substack where he'll put out articles on different beer things that are happening in Bangkok. So I would be happy to say I get some good information from him, and he and I will occasionally exchange information. And
I like this angle. So you're, like you said, you're the guide. You're not the guy. You're the connector.
Right.
And you want to sort of get everyone together to make everyone stronger, to make the whole scene much more accessible.
I like to think I'm just trying to get more and better information out there for people that might be trying to find it. I do not want to try to speak with authority saying that I am the man that knows everything. No.
I'm the beer master.
I know what beers I like, and they are going to be different beers from other people. And that's one of my favorite parts about beer, is that I will happily argue with a friend about what makes this beer good or bad. But when it comes down to it, if you like to drink it, you like to drink it, and that's all that matters.
This might be a silly question because I'm not a big beer guy. I can have maybe 2, maybe 3, and I'm done. What do you like so much about beer? Why has it become a passion of yours beyond that tastes good after I work out?
All right. The simple answer is that a beer is a simple brewed concoction that yes, you're right. For me, the flavor is great. I enjoy the little bit of buzz that comes with it. But what gets to me is being able to see what the brewer put into it. Because each brewer can make the same style of beer, but it's always going to be a little bit different from each other, from one brewer to the next. And I like to experience the different flavors. For example, if you like fried rice, great. But what about adding different spices to it, or pairing it with something else? Just the different flavors and expressions of the dishes. I think that's a great way to think of with beer as well. And if I were to think on a bigger perspective, to me, beer is the everyman's drink.
Okay.
That wine very often comes across as, oh, you're rather snobby, and ooh, you're drinking good wine. And to be very fair, I'm happy for a good glass of wine, but it's just not as refreshing, and it's not the common man's drink of beer. So for me, I also really get that political part where I'm like, wait, if we're in a country, if we're in Bangkok, if we're in Thailand and we're not from Thailand, why aren't we drinking the local beer of the Thai people? For me, this is also about, I want to put the money back into the economy that I'm living in. You know, I don't want to send my money back to the US, back to the UK every time. Right. I think there's always times for that. You know, if I'm in the mood for this type of beer, great. But in general, I want to have the option to be able to support the local brewers, the local economy, because that's where I'm living. And I just feel that's a better way to be part of the local environment.
And they also need our help too, right? Like I said, it's a fairly nascent industry. So the more we help them, the better it'll be, the better the quality will be, the more they'll be able to expand and grow and perhaps change the laws.
There are some big names with a lot of money working really hard to make sure that these small guys do not have an easy job.
Interesting. The less said about that, the better. Yeah, I need a refill on this beer.
Now, did you want a refill on the beer we're having, or did you want to try something a little different?
How much is left in there?
I've got a little bit left.
Yeah, I'll have some more of that.
Cool.
So you're out updating this website, and it's pretty good. It's a pretty good website. It's pretty comprehensive, and it's updated fairly regularly. As someone who has somewhat of a digital presence myself, I know what a huge pain in the ass that can be. What's it like being out there? What's your feedback from the local communities? What are they doing? What are they excited about? What are they pissed off about?
That can be a difficult question to try to answer because there are so many things happening at the same time. I will say that a lot of what's happening in the beer community that I see is that most people are like, oh, there's craft beer in Thailand? Who knew? Which is like, well, no, there's great stuff everywhere. I just had to find it. And how do I find a way to say, hey, here are some ideas for good craft beer? Some other difficult parts are that there are certain laws where you're not allowed to advertise beer,
right? But
you can advertise that you have a soda. So if your big beer company is advertising their soda and not their beer, they can definitely have their big name on billboards all across the city.
But everyone knows,
right? It's you got to watch that.
Yeah.
I think sometimes an issue is also distribution. And that's, if you're not big into the beer industry, you don't know how it works. Distribution is a very important thing because it's how you get where it's made to where your customers are going to be. Mm-hmm. So sometimes it's a big deal that you have a distributor that they do not carry any Thai beer. They only sell imported beer. And then you see them do this thing where you go to a certain bar or two and they will only serve beer from that one distributor. And it's like, that is really uncool.
So it's like when I go to a restaurant and they only have Pepsi. I'm like, I wanted a Coke.
Right.
I'll settle for a Pepsi, but I really wanted a Coke.
That's a great idea, but it's also, to me, infuriating when, the bar advertises that it has 12 taps of soda. And it's like, no, you got You're all serving the same thing. Yeah.
You might have 12 taps, but they all output the same product.
They're all putting out an easy beer from afar.
Right. So what are there new places opening quickly? Is there a surplus of places to go? Are people finding it difficult to establish themselves? What's the word on the street?
From my experience, there's places opening all the time, but there's also the idea that you don't always know how to find places. So not that I'm saying my site is the best, but I do try to keep up a good list of places to try. And when you're looking at some of the media in Bangkok, some of the local publishers will always talk about maybe the top 5 or the top 10 beer bars in Bangkok. And it's always the same ones. And it's like, come on, guys. The city is bigger than just the 10 bars that you wrote about 4 months ago. You can show some change. But if I were to have my opportunity to say a few bar names, like I think Hayes is a great bar in Chinatown that they serve a lot of local craft beer and they make some of their own. There's a place called Sheepshank, which is right on the river, and that's Dock 13, their bar. So you can literally watch the sunset on the river and enjoy some local beers out on their patio. And I think it's great. And I have no idea why it never gets into the local media around here.
Okay.
Also, have you heard of the place called the Fat Cow?
Yes, I've been there. The one out by out in Tonbury, by the BTS
Yep.
exchanges with the subway.
There's 4 locations, I think, now.
Okay.
And while you wouldn't always think of that as being a great beer location, they generally have at least 8 taps or maybe 6 in some of their other locations, but they rotate their beers a lot. And because they've got 4 locations and the guy can choose which beers are coming in, he's able to bring in a lot of local beers that you don't find on tap elsewhere. And it's kind of a fun time to go to the Fat Cow. And if you're getting a burger or getting a sandwich, and be like, okay, what local beers do they have on tap? And sometimes you get there just in time that they kick a keg, and all of a sudden you got a whole nother beer that you have the opportunity to try that you may not have heard before.
Good burgers, the Fat Cow too.
Very much so.
Burger and a beer. I mean, that's comfort food if I've ever heard it.
It makes for a good Tuesday night.
Yeah.
Other bars, for instance, to follow up on the idea that sometimes you don't know where they are until you're there, there's a place that I think is really cool called 39 Craft. And it's at the bottom of Prom Pong BTS station.
Oh, really?
And they are a coffee bar during the day, but in the evening, 5 p.m., they turn their lights down, they put on their neon, and they've got some great craft beers. And it's a well-curated selection. So they've only got like maybe 12 taps, but you can tell they think about what they put on tap, because they'll have like an IPA, they'll have a lager, they'll have something weird and different, they'll have an import, they'll have a domestic. So you have a variety of things to choose, and
Cool.
It makes good. Another cool one is, I'm not going to say this correctly, I think it's Beer Pradit. Beer Pradit.
Bia Pradit.
There we go. And that one is really focusing on the local beer, and they're one of the ones where you look on their Facebook page and all the information is in Thai. So sometimes you got to hit translate a few times and got to look at the picture. Sometimes they'll have the translations of the beer names and that sort, but not always easy to get to, but it's got a good long selection. They're pretty new. And there's also the bar Pijo in Chinatown, which it's a small Chinatown craft beer bar, but it's always got a selection worth going to.
I've heard of that one too. Crack that bad boy open. There we go. Keep that flowing. What are we drinking here?
So let's start with the first one. Let's point out the first one was the Crispy Boy, a Helles. This is a lager done by the Brewing Project. So one of your previous guests, Brian is part of Beervana and does the Brewing Project. And so this is a solid tall boy, easy drinking lager that if I'm just out, just needing a beer, I'm happy to grab this sort of can. So just a good introductory beer.
I know so little about beer that I'm often swayed by the design of the can. But when I was younger, what the hell is that? That's green.
Yes, sir. The new beer that I am pouring is green. This is a smoothie style beer.
I don't know what the hell I'm getting into here. Although I will say I was really impressed when they figured out how to mix chocolate with beer. That pricked my ears up.
That's a fun one.
Okay, I got to take a photo of this. We'll send this out to our patrons. but this looks like a celery smoothie.
Well, to be fair, I'm not trying to make you healthy. Instead, there are styles of beers where they incorporate a lot of fruit smoothie elements. So the beer that you're taking a picture of, it's by a brewery, Samada, which I got to say, I'm a big fan of what they do. The first time I tried them, their style of beer I thought was excellent. I was like, ooh, I'm going to keep that name in my head. And proud to say they are being brewed in Bangkok now, because I'm sure you knew there was a time where most craft beer in Thailand had to be brewed outside of the country.
Right. It would often be brewed just across the border in Cambodia and then trucked back into Thailand.
Cambodia, Singapore, so that they would actually have to have taxes added because they were technically imported. But because of the changes in the law, some of these companies are able to kind of pull together and get smaller facilities, but still make it legal for them to be able to brew in country.
Yeah, so I'm looking on this beer. This green one is called Greeny Colada. Ingredients: pineapple, mango, coconut, vanilla, and blue curacao syrup. Let's see what this tastes like. God damn, that's good. Now this it tastes like juice.
Yep.
Now, I got a lot of friends who are sort of beer purists. Shout out to my buddy Scott. And I don't know if they would like this. They'd probably think this was sort of sacrilegious.
I think there's a very good chance of that.
Yeah.
And I welcome that sort of discourse, because I will say this isn't my favorite style and this is not what I would go for every time. But cracking one open and enjoying one. I mean, can you imagine sitting on the river, sitting in the sun, just enjoying something sweet and cool like this?
Fruited sour.
Fruited sour. That's right.
That was my nickname in high school. So yeah, this is really interesting. And to be fair, I always go for the weirdest. Brightest colored things. Like I said before, the ones with the best label design. When I was a kid, I wanted to design alcohol bottles. I thought that'd be a cool job.
Right.
But getting back to my previous thought about how a lot of these places are way out of town, I think for me that signals that there is a broad support of this kind of stuff. Like there's craft beer fans all over Bangkok. They're not just tourists coming into Sukhumvit.
Well, in fact, I would say that that is how a craft beer, if you will, movement has to be done in any country. That if you're going to have, you need the local support of the populace to be drinking your beers, instead of trying to say, oh, well, I hope any tourists coming in might try the beer. So yes, when you have a lot of the craft beer places, bars, they're open up out towards the, as I would call them, suburbs or the outer neighborhoods. If they're being successful, that's great, because that means there's enough people in the local area going there to support them and enjoy drinking their beer. And if that makes me more of the outsider that's like, listen, if it's outside the MRT or BTS, it makes it real hard to get home sometimes.
Yeah, no kidding.
So, and I think that is one of the reasons why I try to include good places to go and try to be pretty comprehensive. But if you are strictly a cab ride 30 minutes directly west of Bangkok, I'm like, I'm not sure there's much of a big point in putting you on the site.
Yeah. Let's talk about the process of updating this website. Like I said, it's not an easy job. So you hear about a new place that's sort of a bit outside your normal stomping grounds. What's the process like? How does it go from you hearing about it to it appearing on your website?
The process, I would say, is the first thing I might do is be able to just find it. If it's coming across as an advertisement on Facebook, or one of the good ways is if I'm following one of the distributors, they'll often put out, hey, we have this cool new beer and it is going to these different bars. And that makes it a great way to say, well, if that's where that craft beer is going, then that's going to be a good place to have on the website. So then I'll kind of look on the maps. I'll check in what's their Facebook link. Sometimes it's just a matter of liking them so that maybe I can follow up with them. There are definitely times if I'm on the BTS heading to work, I'll just be able to take a screenshot of something and then in my downtime be able to start putting more information together.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you just go down there and sample it and give your reviews, or do you...
I really avoid trying to do too much reviewing.
No editorializing. Hey?
I try not to, because if you and I are drinking as friends, then yes, I'm very happy to say, well, I think this, but I don't, as in, I am not the beer guide. I am trying to help get more information out there. So I don't want to put in a review of a place that maybe I didn't have a good time for some reason, or just because that bar serves, let's take, for example, if there's a bar that serves only wheat beer, I am going to hate it. But there could be plenty of people that think that's a great idea.
I like wheat beer.
As you should.
That's funny. That reminds me, years and years ago, I was asked to be the food critic, the restaurant critic for a friend's website. They were starting up to review a certain part of Bangkok. And I did it for a few months. And then after a while, I realized that I was a total fraud, because I'd be just as happy eating a gas station hot dog as I would with a filet mignon. And I was just like, what do I know about? Like, I go to a place, I don't like how they cook the broccoli. Well, maybe that's how they cook broccoli now. Maybe that's how all the good places are doing it. I don't know. But all I know is that I didn't like it. And I felt like a bit of a fraud telling people that they also shouldn't like it because of my taste.
I think you make a great point, which speaks to one of the reasons I don't want to review anything. Because I don't want to say this is the right way or this is the wrong way. You know, I know for a fact I am quite fond of some of the beers here that I brought tonight, and I know somebody I know very well is not a fan of all the same beers. That's totally fine. I think that's one of the best parts about craft beer, is that small differences can mean that I think it's good and somebody else is like, no, that's really not my style and I don't ever want to drink it again. And I think when times that I've had fun talking about beer, it's not going, oh, this is horrible and I really hate it, or this is the greatest thing ever. It becomes a question of, oh, what little tastes are you getting? Like, what do you think? Like, do you think this is what the brewer meant? Because obviously, if the brewer is producing so many thousand gallons of beer, this is really what they meant to come across. So I think that's kind of fun, rather than saying, oh, everybody should like what I like and nobody should dislike what I dislike, you know?
Yeah. And that's a good thing about any sort of fan-driven community that starts up, is because there's this shared language, there's shared love, and you might not always agree on everything, but at least you can debate it and push it forward. Man, I'm kind of freaking out over this beer, this green beer, this Samara beer.
Samada. I will say Samada, I've met the brewer. His name is Choate. He is a cool guy. He is a nice dad. Like, I've seen him at beer events where he has a son with him. He's just a super cool guy. So to me, it is the coolest thing to be able to know the guy that brews the beer and then have some really good beer that is brewed here in Bangkok.
It's more the audacity of brewing something like this and calling it beer, because it tastes like a cocktail to me. But it's on Instagram, Samata Brewing, Samata, Samata Brewing on Instagram. I'll check that out.
Yeah. And so I think that it's a little too late, because I think this episode will probably be not coming out for a little while. There is an event on Saturday, which I have to say I'm rather excited about, because it's at another bar that I've not been to before. So I'll get to see a new place, and they're launching a number of different Thai craft beers. So some of the ones I brought tonight, there's going to be something from the Brewing Project, which I think makes some great beers. You mentioned their can design. They've actually literally won awards for the design of their cans.
I'd love a good design of an alcohol container.
Right?
I don't know what is something about it. It's just so unique and bespoke, and it's and artistic. I love it.
I love the idea that you can be really into beer and go, also, we need some really good beer art. And I think that's great. The one we're drinking right now, Samada is going to have some beer at that place. So hoping to see the brewer Choate there. Also, a big brewery that I've been a fan of, which has been hard to get recently, is a beer called Bon Bangkok, Baan, Bon Bangkok.
Bon Bangkok, yeah.
Yeah.
It's Bangkok House.
Yep. So you could actually get some of their beer at Hayes in Chinatown, but I think, as of this recording, they've recently been picked up by Beervana. So they're going to be able to start having their beers more widely available, which makes me super happy, because their style of beer is generally the really hazy, sometimes bitter beers that I think are excellent.
I'm not a big hops guy. I don't like it. Any stay away from those.
I think that's totally fine. When I was getting into beer, I was what was called at the time a malt monster. So, stouts, porters, anything with a lot of oomph and body. That was it. It took me a long time before I could hit like the IPAs, double IPAs, and that sort.
I'll tell you what, it's coming off a bike ride at Chit Beer on Coqueret and going right into a porn milk stout is
that sounds
gives you a bit of a buzz.
I bet.
Well, Cliff, this is a really cool site, and I'm glad we got to chat about it. As we're closing down here, what do you think the future looks like for Thailand's craft beer industry? Have you seen good increasing momentum? Do you think things are going to shrink again? Do you think what's the outlook?
To be totally honest, I'm pretty positive on the outlook because as of recently, there have been some new bars that have been opening. As we said, Chit Beer is opening like a third location here in Bangkok. Tao has his place that he seems to be doing very well. Beervana is one of the distributors that's doing very well. And also, there's another distributor called Group B, which they're out of the United People's Brew Pub, which they're brewing their own beer here in Bangkok. You can go visit them. They're great people. They got some good food. They're distributing strictly Thai craft beer. And this group also puts on what's called a Thai Craft Beer Week. And they did this in October. So for me, I see just there's going to be more stuff going on. Part of my wish, if I had a way to be king of beer, I would like to try to unite the clans. Because at times like this, when the stranglehold is really held by the big monopolies, the big brewing companies, sometimes the smaller breweries and even the beer drinkers themselves, it can be a very fragmented place. And so I hope that I can keep supporting the community and maybe help people connect so that the road ahead remains very rosy and sunny for Thai craft beer.
A rising tide lifts all boats, especially if that tide is beer.
Yeah. And get that tide real high.
Last question before we go. What do you think about the prices? Now, the prices are sometimes a little bit off-putting to me. Recently, I was out with a buddy and we had a pint of Guinness at a place on Silom, and it was 360 baht.
Yeah.
It was like $15.
Yeah. I really don't have good answers on the price of beer. I think sometimes it has to come down to, you're not going to be able to transport a good beer super cheap. You can't put a good beer in the back of a pickup truck on a hot sunny day and hope that it arrives in time. You can't put cheap ingredients into a beer and hope you get something good out, So while I recognize, a lot of people would be like, oh, the beer is just too expensive. I get it. But at the same time, I'm not throwing back 10 craft beers in a night just for fun. And
quality over quantity.
It is. And I would agree with you that usually when I'm out drinking, unless I've got that thirst, most nights, if I'm out for a few beers, it's just a few beers. It's 2 or 3 beers. I recognize it's going to be a little more expensive, but I'm happy to pay for having a little bit of a better quality and knowing that especially some of these beers are going to stay in town to maybe support the local industry. Makes me able to feel a little bit better. Nice. And convince myself maybe I can have one more and it's going to make everybody's life better.
It's funny how craft beer is sort of moving towards the wine thing. Like no one goes out and has 8 glasses of wine. Right. You're smashed if you do that. But it's more like I'll have a couple glasses of wine, and now it's like I'll have a couple of craft beers and just take the edge off and enjoy them.
Yeah. Well, I agree that there are many similarities in beer and wine that you don't slug back a glass of wine, right? You want to sip because it's got a lot of flavor. And so I'd rather sip the beer, enjoy the flavor. If I need to get drunk, well, there's going to be a shot glass of hard alcohol somewhere. I don't need a beer to do that. That'll just make me use the bathroom sooner. That's right.
So where do people find more information? What's the website again?
So again, if you just look up Bangkok Beer Guide, BangkokBeerGuide.com is the website address. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and even TikTok. And I'm happy to talk. I'm happy to try to help anybody looking for beer. And yeah, just happy to support the local community best as I can.
Cool. All right, man, I'm going to turn the recording off right now, but let's talk about going to Tao's place and sampling some brews there.
Absolutely. They got some good local food too.
Nice. Thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, dude, until you told me about this, I didn't even know about this guide. And so when I checked out the website, it is damn good. It's very comprehensive.
Yeah, man, it takes a lot of time and effort to keep something like that up to date. And I guess the reward, of course, is that you get to drink beer all over the place if you're like reviewing movies or something.
For sure. And it is amazing that how, really our podcast, when you listed all the people we've had, our podcast is a pretty good record of the history of craft beer in Thailand. We're on top of it, man.
That's right. And of course, I left out Matthew from Fatty's, and he's not a beer guy himself, but you can get some good craft beer there as well.
Of course, sure. And the other weird twist is in my documentary film class this semester, one team of students made a short documentary film about this whole craft beer scene and the story and the legality and Taophipop from Parliament. Although I'm not sure they know about the Bangkok Beer Guide. I'll have to let them know about it.
Yeah, they should check it out. It's really interesting. And of course, as you heard in the interview, Clif was kind enough to bring along a few different brews for us to down while we talked. And man, I went off on it. But that green beer he brought, it was delicious. It looked like a celery smoothie.
Interesting. And it was made out of coconut?
No, it was made out of like pineapple and fruit juices and stuff. It was almost like a cocktail, but I couldn't believe it when he was like, here's a beer, and he poured it out and it was bright green. But I've been like, seriously, I've been thinking about it ever since. I got to find where they sell it and buy some more.
Well, the creativity is definitely out there as the interview showed, from my students who made this short documentary film. They quoted someone speaking in Parliament, Thai Parliament, about, bitching about the restrictive laws, as you guys talked about. But they cited some crazy number for the number of craft beers and micro beers in Japan. It was some insane number, like 50,000.
Really?
Like way more than you would think, compared to the number of legal beers brewed in Thailand is under 10 or something. It's like in terms of the main beers. So the difference is insane, and obviously they're not enforcing a lot of the laws, but man, those laws really need to change.
Yeah, and I think we're starting to see, like, it's sort of like with the weed thing, right? You can try to put that genie back in the bottle, but at a certain point, it's just you can't hold back that pressure, that flow, that love of this culture. And
For
so
sure.
I think it's only going to improve as time goes on, and thanks to people like Clif and a lot of other
For
people
sure.
who are doing great stuff in the scene. So yeah, thanks for coming on the show, Clif. It was good to chat. Thanks for bringing along those cool beers, and we'll keep at it, sampling throughout the city.
For sure. Thank you, Cliff. Great website.
Yeah. All right, let's get into some love, loathe, or live with, where one of us picks a particular aspect of living in Bangkok, which we discuss to decide if it's something we love about living here, loathe about living here, or have come to accept as something that we just have to learn to live with no matter how we feel about it. This week it's my turn. Now, for those of you who haven't listened to the bonus show, you heard me bitching about these little flying ant mosquito things in my condo. There are tons of them. I don't know where they're coming from, but they're suddenly all over the place. So I am hoping that Kun Bob, who I have named my gecko, who lives in my kitchen, will get a healthy meal tonight. So
Sure.
That's my question, Ed. What do you think of the little jingjoks, the geckos that climb all over the walls and houses and stuff here in Thailand? Are you a fan or?
Oh, funny, interesting. They've actually never bothered me at all. I know some people are bothered by them. Some Thai people, some Thai girls really don't like them or think they're dirty. And of course, there's some superstitions about them. But I don't know. They never bother me. This is going to be a tough one. I'm not sure I could say love. I mean, maybe if I had, I guess to a certain extent, if they are eating mosquitoes or other annoying bugs, then I guess you could say, like, you could appreciate them, right? But I think I'm probably just going to have to go with the live with. But they definitely never bothered me. But I know that some people, they look at them as cockroaches. But to me, cockroaches are way worse.
Oh, dude, a million times worse.
Agreed.
You're right,
agreed.
though. some people see a gecko on the wall and they lose their mind. They
I
freak
know.
out. But
I know.
I love them. I think that I always try to catch them. I think they're cute. I think they're like adorable
about
little
that.
animals. They're helpful in your house, like you said. They eat bugs. I love them. I think they're cool.
I don't know about cute and adorable, so I'm not sure I can join you. So you're a love on this one.
Cute and adorable. Pick one up. You know what you do? You get your little finger and you put it under their
geez.
chin, and
Okay.
they're probably terrified and think you're going to kill them. But it looks cute, and I think they're adorable little creatures. Yeah, I love them.
Well, I'm with you on that. There's nothing really offensive about them. I don't get that. But I'm gonna go live with.
Yeah. See, but if I would have done cockroaches, then of course it would have been a hard loathe from both of us, obviously. So that's
Heck
proof that they are way better than cockroaches.
Alrighty. Okay, a final thanks to our patrons who support the show. Patrons get a ton of cool perks and the warm, fuzzy feeling knowing that they're helping in our never-ending quest for cool content. Find out more by clicking support on our website. And connect with us online. We're Bangkok Podcast on social media, bangkokpodcast.com on the web, or simply bangkokpodcast@gmail.com. We love hearing from our listeners and always reply to our messages.
Yeah, baby. You can also listen to each episode on YouTube. You can send us a voicemail through our website that we'll feature on the show. See me on Threads at BKKGreg. Thank you for listening, everyone. Take it easy out there. Enjoy the cool weather and the rain when it comes. I'll see you back here next week.
No doubt. Test. Hello.
A 1 and a 2 and a...
Yeah, the dynamic mic, I think is just better. The lav sounds fine. It just picks up all kinds of room sounds and all the other speakers.
Right. I've been thinking I want to get a dynamic mic. This condenser I have now is good. It gives really good sound, but it's just
Too
you
sensitive.
can hear my air conditioning before I do any of the post-production editing and filtering. Like you can hear the air conditioning, you
Right.
hear motorcycles in the background and stuff.
Yeah, they're sensitive. Sometimes you want the ambience. For example, our walk through the J Fest. That's a good example where
Right.
we wanted all that ambience.
Right.
That's a good. That's when a regular lav, like a condenser lav, is good.
Right. Yeah, that'll do for now.